All right. Okay, everybody can see my screen? Oops, no, not this one. Does my screen show Xunzi, the portrait of our philosopher, the Swede?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome, very good. Okay, now let's get it started. So today we're going to be talking about another philosopher, Xunzi. First, let me make sure it's recording. Okay, now Xunzi. We have covered many major intellectual trends and philosophical schools of early China, including Confucianism, Taoism, Moism, legalism, right? And we also mentioned some other schools. But when it comes down to late Warring States period, there is a strong tendency towards syncretism. That means a lot of the philosophers are learning from each other. So that means Confucian scholars may learn from Taoists, so-called legalists may learn from Confucian scholars or Taoists. So you see this a mutual influence or influences between the different philosophical trends. Xunzi, he would position himself in the tradition of Confucianism. Yeah, he would consider himself as a faithful follower of Confucius himself, who lived hundreds of years before him. Xunzi lived in a time when there were only 7 major warring states fighting against each other. Okay, actually, within one generation of Xunzi's time, the warring states period was ended. Eventually, it was ended by the rise of Qing, which conquered all other 6 kingdoms, and also the Eastern Zhou court was also destroyed by Qing. All these kingdoms were all unified by Qing. You know, Chinese sometimes they call it conquered or unified, depending on your political stance. You know, when historians are trying to describe a historical event, the kind of names you use to refer to a war, to refer to a region, pretty much show your political stance, right? Pretty much show your political stance. So this is the naming truly is may or may not be 100% accurate to historical reality, but naming does reflect our political stance, our attitude, also demonstrates where we're from and how we look at the event. So yeah, so whether it's a Qing conquest of China or it's a Qing unification of China, it's up to you. It's up to you, okay? Yeah, just like, for example, a lot of historical events, like a major war. Is the American Civil War a rebellion? Would you call it a rebellion of the South? Or it's a revolution of the South? It's up to you, right? Or you can ask the same question for American Revolutionary War. I mean, for the founding fathers of this country, it's a revolution, but King George III would consider it as a rebellion. So the name we give to all these wars and regions pretty much show our political stance. So yeah, whether it's a Qing conquest of China or unification, it's open to interpretations, multiple interpretations always. Okay, but we do know that what happened is that within one generation of Xunzi's time, the Qing won the day. Qing turned out to be the most militarily powerful state that was able to conquer all the other states. Okay, but in Xunzi's time, this was just about to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened yet. Okay, So Xunzi was expecting, if you look at his writing, I'm sure you did in this week, Xunzi was expecting some kind of oneness in China's political situation. This is actually a consensus shared by many of his contemporary people. A lot of Chinese are tired of all the constant warfare that is besetting China. People are thinking about how all under heaven, in this case, is China, right? Because Chinese civilization, by and large, was sort of isolated from many other major civilizations. During the War and Peace period, did the Chinese heard about ancient Rome? Well, we don't have direct evidence. We don't have evidence to show that in the following dynasties, especially in the Han Dynasty, which is from 200 BCE to 200 AD. Chinese people did hear about Roman Empire, and they even tried to send someone to the west, crossing Central Asia. The Chinese emissary perhaps even reached as far as near Mediterranean Sea area, and they did hear about the Roman Empire, but that was hundreds of years later. Okay, and also for India, did Chinese people hear about India? No, we don't have direct evidence for War and Peace period. Maybe they have heard about it, but we don't have textual evidence. The solid textual evidence that Chinese people heard about India was from the Han Dynasty. So by and large, yeah, this area is basically the kind of civilization Chinese knew during the War and Peace period, and most Chinese are so tired of all the constant warfare, so they want this kind of a warfare state to be settled. Okay, they want a peace order, of course. Ordinary people always want that, but the question is how. The question is how. Which state is gonna really end the constant warfare? Okay, and conquer all other kingdoms, and to have a war that ends all warfares. So that's a debate. Well, Xunzi sort of touched upon this issue of how China is gonna eventually come to a oneness, a peace and order that ended all wars. But his premise is that he's expecting some kind of a ruler that would follow his ideas. Okay, I mean, just like many other thinkers, Xunzi believes that his idea is the one that may help China to end all these warfares and reach lasting peace and order. Okay, well, he did not see the so-called unification of Qing himself, but two of his disciples who studied with him. We're going to talk about this in the following weeks. One is called Han Feizi, the other is called Li Si. Both of them studied with the Xunzi, and both Han Feizi and and Li Si went to the state of Qing to find jobs. Li Si actually became the prime minister or the grand counselor in the kingdom of Qing. But Han Fei was a little unlucky. He went there a little late. When he got there, his classmate Li Si has already been appointed as the prime minister. But both Li Si and Han Fei, although they have studied with this Confucian scholar Xunzi, both of them turn out to be legalist thinkers. Their thoughts are close to Lord of Shang, and for that reason, both of them were favored by the king of Qing. Okay, well, Li Si was appointed as a prime minister. Obviously, that shows the support of the king. Han Fei went there a little late, and they did talk to the Qing king, who later became the first emperor of China, who conquered all other kingdoms in 221 BCE. Yeah, let's call him Yingzheng. That's his name. He was this king was later known as the first emperor of China. Okay, so so Yingzheng's political career would be divided into two parts. Before 221 BCE, he was the king of Qing. Okay, he was the king. He was ruling this kingdom. But after, I mean, of course, the conquest took decades. It did not happen overnight. But by 221 BCE, the Qing eventually conquered the very last kingdom that has not been conquered, that is Yan. So in 221 BCE, the Qing did finish the unification of China. And after that, the Qing king, Yingzheng, claimed the title of Huangdi, or emperor, in English word. Okay, and then later he was known as the first emperor of China. We're going to talk about Yingzheng's story later, but here you just need to know that two of Xunzi's disciples went to the state of Qing and got the endorsement or support by Yingzheng, the king who later became the first emperor of China. Okay, so it's worth thinking that why Xunzi, this Confucian scholar, taught two legalist students. This is sometimes a little bit strange to many people. Okay, so let's keep this question in mind when we move on to a detailed discussion of Xunzi. Okay, so just like Confucius and Mencius, Xunzi was traveling around trying to find followers and audience to his teachings, not only among ordinary people, but also especially among rulers. Xunzi did find some kind of a professorship in the state of Qi, but that was temporary. Was pretty short time. Is a short time appointment. So in other words, Xunzi probably served in government very briefly, but not very long. So most of his lifetime, just like Confucius mentions, he was a professor. He was a scholar. He was a teacher. He was a writer. Okay, he devoted most of his life to teaching, philosophical debate, political theory, discussion, and teaching and writing as well. Typically an intellectual in today's standard. Okay, so one thing I want to mention is that historical records show that Xunzi did enjoy longevity. Okay, he died in the age like, I don't know, 90s something. Yeah, he died in his 90s. And also, if you look at the age of most Confucian scholars of early China, somehow they all enjoy the longevity. I don't know whether this is a coincidence or not. For example, Confucius lived all the way to his 70s. Mencius lived all the way to his 80s. And Xunzi lived all the way to his 90s. Okay, all of them enjoy longevity. And in comparison, legalist thinkers, although they enjoyed a lot of power, position, and the recognition of the rulers in the political system, but many of them had a very violent death. We talk about the life of Lord of Shang. He was executed by a very harsh penalty he invented himself. His body was split up by horse chariots. I assume that he did not enjoy longevity, certainly, right? He probably died as a middle-aged man. Well, same thing is true for Han Feizi, another major legalist thinker. We're going to talk about his story next week. When Han Feizi went to the state of Qing, he found out that his classmate Li Si was already appointed as the prime minister. And when Han Feizi talked to the Qing king really loved his ideas and wanted to hire him. But this sort of posed a threat to Li Si, the classmate. And Li Si, before the Qing king could respond, sent an order to his underlings and get Han Feizi executed by forcing him to drink some kind of poison or something. So I'm sorry, Han Feizi also had a very violent, abrupt death, just like Lord of Shang. And the same thing to Li Si, another legalist practitioner. Li Si later was also killed in a power struggle by a powerful eunuch called the Zhao Gao. So all of these legalist thinkers had a violent, terrible death. None of them enjoyed a death, natural death in their bed. So maybe this shows us something. So although the Confucian teachings did not win the day, the Confucian scholars could not find a major employer to hire them for power, to obtain real power, but they did enjoy longevity for some reason. I don't know. Maybe what you truly believe has to do with your physiology, physicality, or a physical condition. I mean, I don't know. I mean, further research certainly has to be done, but this is just an empirical observation of who enjoyed the longevity, among all these thinkers. Okay. Okay, back to Xunzi. Okay, now let's talk about his theories. Xunzi certainly is far more interested in creating a systematic philosophical architecture than Confucius, because we know that Confucius only left us sporadic episodes of speeches, conversations, right? All these things. So Confucius did not leave us a verifiable body of writing that can be confirmed that it's with his authorship, right? But Xunzi did spend a lot of time writing, and they try to build a systematic system, a system of philosophy. Okay, the system of philosophy of Xunzi starts with the origin of ritual. Okay, in one chapter that he called 理论, that's Chinese, that means on ritual. You have that section in your excerpt. Xunzi talks about before humans had government, before humanity had a government, Xunzi imagined humankind lived in sort of a natural state. Okay, this is very similar to the Enlightenment period of European thinkers. Okay, we know that in 17th, 18th century Europe, in France and Britain, we have philosophers like John Locke, Grotius, right, in Netherlands, and also later Jean-Jacques Rousseau in France. All these thinkers, they imagined a so-called natural state in which humankind lived in before government came into being. Okay, Xunzi was very similar. Okay, Xunzi was very similar, although he did not use the term, the English term natural state. But in his discussion, he certainly imagined there was such a state before civilization or government came into being. Okay, he imagined that, he says, without government, then people would live in sort of a natural state in which people would just go for their natural desires. They would fight against each other. Okay, they go when they're hungry, they want to eat, right? When they're cold, they want to have clothing and housing, right? They would fight against each other for resources just for their survival. So, I mean, this kind of a discussion of human nature certainly is verified by modern biology. We talk about Dawkins's book, Selfish Gene, right? Many scientists and biologists believe that, yeah, if there's any human nature, anything intrinsic about human nature, that is natural evolutionary design for us to pass on our gene, right? We are designed to just pass on our gene. So this explains all our activities, including moral activities, So Xunzi sort of followed the same line. I mean, he did not follow. He was thousands of years before modern scientists, but he sort of reached the same conclusion by assuming human nature is sort of either good or bad, but it's not so good. Let's say the human good is not so good. It simply follows its own design for its own survival and for the survival its own species. Okay, in this case, you pass on your gene, your generation. I mean, Xunzi certainly did not know the concept of gene, of course, but his assumption is certainly similar. So in a natural state, when people are fighting sort of against each other, competing with each other for resources, this creates a problem. The problem comes from the fact that the resources are always limited. Resources are always limited. Okay, good resources are desired by everybody, so it's always limited. So when people are competing for limited resources, they're gonna go into fight inevitably. This creates a chaos. This creates turmoil. okay, fighting, warfare, all the disasters you can imagine. So Xunzi observed this, and he imagined that this is the point in history where the sage kings emerged. Sage kings are smarter than people. They're not gods, okay? Most of these early Chinese thinkers, they're not that interested in presuming that there is a god or high god that creates the world and give us some kind of laws, natural laws, right? This is a Christian concept, but Chinese do not share this assumption. They in their world, they imagine civilization was created by people just like us, sage kings. They're ordinary people. Physically they're ordinary people, but they're just smarter. They have more wisdom. So Xunzi imagines that this is when sage kings came into being, and sage kings thought this is inconvenient. Okay, this is bad when we have all this chaos, when people compete for limited resources. So sage kings created a ritual. They created norms, ritual, right? In a sense of the social norms for everybody to have their position in the society. So in other words, there is no such thing like a natural law for Xunzi, but instead, laws are created, norms are created, rules are created by human people, humans just like us, sage kings, okay? The kind of cultural, moral elites that we call sage kings, okay? And this is very necessary. This is great for Xunzi, okay? Because human nature, Xunzi argues, is not very good. Okay, well, the word he used is 恶, 性恶. That's the Chinese terms he used. But I think in early China, what the Chinese character 恶 means is a little bit different from modern Chinese in the sense that it doesn't imply that strong a sense as evil, right? So, sometimes you will see Xunzi's theory being translated into a argument called human nature is evil. I think that's probably way too strong. What he means is that it's not so good, okay? It's not so good. It's not as pure, pristine, and kind, and benevolent, and good as Mencius imagined. So in this case, Xunzi is arguing directly against Mencius, the Confucian scholar who is before him. Okay, so here's a little review. Remember when we talk about Mencius, we talk about how Mencius believed that human nature is good, right? When Mencius believed that when anybody who sees a child about to fall into a water well to drown, you would help out. You would help out to help the innocent child out of danger, right? So Mencius believed that's how we understand that human nature is innately good. Okay, that's Mencius' argument. But Xunzi says something very different. Xunzi says no, human nature is kind of not so good. Yeah, perhaps bad. Yeah, because look at how humans act when they're hungry. They just want to eat. When they were cold, they're competing for clothes, right? When they feel when they want power and money, wealth, they do nasty things to each other to get what they wanted. Okay, so human nature is not that good. They're just like beasts, basically, like beasts. Okay, they could be pretty terrible. So Xunzi doesn't have that kind of a very strong conviction in the innate kindness of human nature, and this leads to the same answer that Mencius would have provided to humankind. That is the importance of learning. That's the importance of ritual. Xunzi says precisely because human nature is not very good, we need a ritual. We need the social norms created by sages to regulate our society so that everyone know their position. So with the ritual, with the norms, if you have to follow them, then even when you're hungry, but if you're at a ceremony with some kind of a sacrifice, fruits or meat there that is offered to gods or deities or ancestors, even when you're hungry at the ceremony, you know that you're not supposed to take that food. So we have the sense of propriety. We know what is right and wrong. We know what is proper and what is improper because we have ritual, right? So that's his logical reasoning about why human nature is bad would lead to the necessity of ritual. So ritual is created by sage kings, and the ritual for Xunzi is the way, the Tao, okay, the path, the right path people should follow. It's just that simple, okay? Now, if we compare Xunzi and Mencius, although two Confucian scholars are arguing diametrically against each other, but they do share something in common. Okay, let's talk about the differences first. When Mencius or Mengzi talk about human nature being good, obviously he's not saying all humans are good. We talked about this many times before. Okay, Mencius is not as naive as to argue that all humans are good. Otherwise, we won't need the prison, right? We won't need the punishments. We won't need the laws. Mencius is actually saying what differentiates humankind as a distinctive species from other species like, I don't know, beasts, is the fact that we have this so-called goodness in our mind that allows us to have this sense of shame, sense of a propriety, sense of differentiation, sense of moral senses. So basically, moral senses are what differentiate humankind from other species, like I don't know, lions, tigers, right? Okay. So in that sense, if you want to say you're a human, then you must show that you have moral senses. And the moral senses are the so-called seeds of goodness endowed by heaven in everyone's mind heart. But this is only a potential, okay? So some people may, in Mencius' eyes, some people may choose to act like a beast. They may kill people, slaughter other people, just like beasts, okay? In that case, for Mencius, he loses the right to call himself a human. He's not a human anymore because he chose to obscure or abandon his humanity or human nature, okay? In that case, he chose to act like a beast. In that case, you can just regard him as a beast. So this is why in later Chinese culture, a lot of times when people when criminals do terrible things, the society would condemn him, saying, 不是人, you're not a human, you're a beast. You abandoned your human nature. Okay, so that's a Mencius moral philosophy. Now, but for Xunzi's definition of human nature is very different. Okay, so we want to make sure how Xunzi defines human nature in a way different from Mencius. Mencius' definition of human nature is what differentiates humans from other species. But Xunzi defines human nature in a very different way. Xunzi defines everything that comes with human by birth as human nature. Okay, so in other words, it's more like a biological definition of human nature. That means anything that we're born with instead of anything versus something we require. Okay, so we're talking about nature versus nurture. Okay, for Xunzi, nature in this case is anything that is not acquired in our lifetime, but we're born with. For example, when we're cold, we want warmth, or we're hungry, we want food, or we're sexually mature, we want to have sex and mate. So that's how humans are. Okay, that's what Xunzi defines as human nature. Now you can see this definition is very different from Mencius' definition. Okay, Xunzi's definition of human nature overlaps a lot with other species in terms of their biological traits. Okay. So this is why Xunzi claims that human nature is not that good. Okay, we it could be nasty and terrible. Okay, we could do all kinds of nasty, mean things just for us to survive, right? So, so this is difference in definition of human nature between Xunzi and Mencius. But if you follow these two opposing definitions, you will find out that Xunzi considered morality or moral codes, in this case ritual, as artifice. That means a human construct. But Mengzi considered morality as something natural because it's already in our mind and heart, endowed by heaven. So it's something natural. So we see these two very different approaches to morality. Xunzi says, yeah, morality is something created, it's a human artifact, it's artifice, okay, it's an artifact. It's a creation by sage kings, but it's good, okay, it's a necessary check and balance and a remedy for terrible human nature, okay. But Mengzi, on the other hand, says no, morality is natural, okay. It's in everything, everyone has this natural seeds of goodness in our mind and heart, and this is what makes us human, okay? But interestingly, although these two approaches are very different, they lead to the same ending. They lead to the same ending, that is the necessity of using ritual and the culture to cultivate ourselves. So both Xunzi and Mencius eventually showed their Confucian side by agreeing in the end that everyone needs to go through this moral cultivation, okay, using culture and ritual. But they have different emphasis, okay, based on their different starting point. Xunzi believes that precisely because human nature is not that perfect, we need very gradual, cumulative, slow process of learning to do this step by step to sort of change our human nature, to sort of remedy or rectify our human nature towards goodness, towards say sagehood. Okay, so self-cultivation, moral self-cultivation is a long process, arduous, gradual process, cumulative. Yeah, Xunzi says a journey of more than, I don't know, 10,000 miles starts with one step, here and now. It's a little small step, little efforts you make every day that finally will get you there. Okay, so that's Xunzi's approach for education and learning. Education is arduous, sometimes difficult, gradual, slow, effort needing process. But for Mencius, since morality is natural, since self-cultivation doesn't involve that much using external forces to impose on yourself, so in that case, Mencius believes that moral self-cultivation more involves going inward, going inside to discover something you already have. Okay, moral self-cultivation for Mencius is going inward to find something already you have, but you sometimes forget, sometimes obscured by your by environments or other distractions. Okay, so for Mencius, education becomes an inward adventure into something you already have, to discover something you previously had but you may have forgotten. But for Xunzi, education is going outward to find out, to use external norms that are previously, created by sage kings in history, and then use that as an external force to impose on yourself, to change yourself, to reform yourself. Does that make sense? So these are two very different approaches for education and moral self-cultivation for Xunzi and Mencius. This is my understanding. Okay. Now, for Xunzi, way or the path has been created by sage kings. In this case, I think Xunzi is actually closer to Confucius himself. Yeah, because we still don't exactly we're not 100% sure how Confucius looked at human nature. Okay, so maybe both interpretations are correct. So maybe in Confucius' original ideas, he would tolerate both interpretations of his of what human nature is. But Xunzi certainly is close to Confucius in assuming that the ritual has been created by the sage kings, and the ritual or the way, they're constant. They never change. Once they're invented by sage kings, they never change, and they got to transmit it down to us as a cultural heritage. And we need to take care of this cultural heritage, and the role of so-called Xunzi or gentlemen or teachers is to expand on this body of cultural heritage from the ancient sage kings. That's what we want to do. So when you use that body of ancient culture to educate people, then you sort of help other people to get closer to sagehood. Sagehood does not come without effort. You need to make a lot of efforts, huge efforts towards sagehood for you to become a gentleman, a Xunzi. Okay, so this part is pretty easy to understand, right? So education is cumulative. It's a way for gentlemen or teachers to use ancient culture to sort of rectify the imperfect human nature. Okay, so this is why external regulations or norms or sometimes coercion perhaps is necessary, right? It's necessary. Yeah, see, for Mencius, the picture is different. Mencius is saying, no, learning should be voluntary, okay? It should be a natural process. But here, Xunzi is saying, no, learning, education, or moral cultivation is not natural, okay? Sometimes it will involve force, coercion, involves something unnatural like social norms that sage kings created to make you right, make things right. Okay, yeah, in Plato's term, the ancient Greek philosopher Plato says, yeah, learning sometimes is like you have a crooked tree branch. It's totally unusable, but you're gonna use force to make it straight. It takes a lot of efforts and a force to make this crooked tree branch straight, so that you can turn that into a useful tool. Education is just like that. Education is just like it. And a modern, there is a behaviorist school of education who might agree with the Xunzi, saying, yeah, education is all about using external forces to try to change the behavior of the people receiving education. Sometimes it takes a lot of effort, a lot of external regulations, and sometimes it may involve some kind of coercion. But if you repeat the process enough times, yeah, you could change any behavior. This is a behavior-centered education theory. Okay, but there are people who disagree with that. Okay, for example, the critics of the behaviorism in education. I mean, to me, Xunzi is very much like a behavior, the theory of behaviorism education. The critics might argue that sometimes you cannot go against the nature of a human. You cannot go against the human nature or any species' nature to change their behavior. For example, if you only use external forces and even coercion and training, repetitive training, can you make a dog talk? Can you make an elephant fly? You cannot. So in that case, there's a limit to education. You have to really consider the nature, which is an innate, intrinsic limit of education for any individual or any species, including human beings. So yeah, so there are always these two schools for education. So in this class we talk a lot about different theories about education. All right, so Xunzi, in any case, he's closer to today's behaviorism school of education. He believes that education is absolutely necessary, but it's gradual, slow, cumulative. It involves a lot of repetitive training of yourself, right? Yeah. So, for example, Xunzi says, yeah, learning is all about make little small efforts, but consistently, continuously every day, so that every day you're changing a little bit, but cumulatively over the years, you're gonna totally reform yourself. So that's the promise. That's the promise. Okay. Yeah. And Xunzi also believe that everyone does have the kind of a senses or a mind or the cognitive faculty, capabilities to really understand ritual or the way. Okay, we do have that. So that's something good about human nature. Yeah. So he's not totally pessimistic about human nature. He does believe that there is some faculty, heavenly faculty, or faculty in this case means cognitive power or abilities that make us that allow us to understand how ritual works, how what the path is demonstrated by the sage kings. Okay, this is Xunzi's epistemology. So we are, we as a species, we do have the ability to really understand ritual and change ourselves. So that's a good thing. So sometimes he could be optimistic about human nature. And of course, sagehood would be the final stage or the final goal of any learning, education, and a moral self-cultivation. Okay. The problem is that everyone could get there. So in the end, Xunzi tends to agree with the Mencius in the sense that, yeah, everyone can get there. Okay, there is no predetermined limit to how far you can go. Okay, as long as you make efforts, yes, you could get there. As long as you make enough efforts. So in the end, he tend to agree with the Mencius in the sense that everyone can become a sage. Everyone can become a sage. So last thing I want to mention about Xunzi and other early Chinese philosophers is that none of the early Chinese philosophers or thinkers believe that there is a pre-chosen group by God. They don't believe so. Okay, in the Christian tradition, many schools or sects they believe that there are certain people who are pre-chosen by God, and they're the chosen. They're the chosen, and they're very different from the unchosen. And the chosen will have different social obligations, responsibilities, and even moral kind of a calling than other people. But ancient Chinese philosophers never agree with that. So although they had different moral premises, more different assumptions about human nature, about education, but almost all of the Confucian scholars believe that everyone can reach sagehood, which is the best stage of cultivation. This kind of assumption, this kind of egalitarian assumption about the potential of everyone, of any individual, was later shared by Buddhists. When Buddhism came to China during the Han Dynasty, we're talking about 100 AD, that time period. Buddhism came to China through today's Pakistan and Afghanistan, and then through Central Asian Silk Road. Eventually, it got spread to China. In the late Han period, a lot of Chinese are passionate about Buddhism, and then the Chinese had a discussion because for Buddhists, the final stage of a cultivation, Buddhism also, just like Confucianism, it involves a lot of self-cultivation, although it's through meditation and other means, right? But Buddhism also Buddhism's final stage is to become Buddha, right? Or we can call it Buddhahood. That means that's the final stage of your cultivation. And when Buddhism came to China, a lot of the Chinese Buddhists, just like Confucian scholars, they promised that everyone can become Buddha. No one is pre-chosen. No one is discriminated against in this case. As long as you make enough efforts, follow the right path, you will become Buddha. Everyone can. Because the Buddhists later learned from Mencius in saying there is a Buddha nature. They call it Buddha nature, 佛性. Buddha nature is pre-existing in everyone at the moment when you're born. And all you, as a Buddhist, all you need to do. So this is very similar to Mencius discussion of human nature and cultivation, right? The later Buddhists believe that if you go inward, use meditation to go inside, to have this introspection of yourself, trying to discover kind of a Buddha nature that is obscured by desires and other things inside you. And if you expand this seeds of a Buddhahood inside you to make it grow, make it develop, make it feel all your body, eventually over the years, you'll become Buddha. So did you see that? See, So in this case, the process of cultivation is almost exactly the same between Buddhism and Confucianism, right? So this is a theory of so-called Buddha nature is a Chinese invention. Okay, the native Indian Buddhist tradition, we don't see that in traditional Indian tradition, a Buddhist tradition. Okay, we know that there are two branches of Buddhism. One is called Mahayana Buddhism, which is popular in China, Korea, and Japan and Vietnam, and the other is called Theravada Buddhism, which is popular in Sri Lanka, in Thailand, in Cambodia, in Burma. In the Theravada Buddhist tradition, you don't see this discussion of the so-called Buddha nature or seeds of Buddha nature endowed by, I don't know, by reincarnation in everyone. You don't see that. You only see this discussion of Buddha nature in China and Chinese influenced Buddhist areas like Korea and Japan. Okay, so this shows the influence, the later influences between different philosophical trends. All right. Questions about Xunzi?